The Mediterranean Basin is one of the planet's most biologically rich and complex regions. The crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa is considered to be one of Earth's biodiversity hotspots. A vast number of both animal and plant species region live in its various habitats. The Mediterranean Basin is located in one of the planet's temperate zones. The subtropical climate makes it cold and wet here in winter, hot and dry in summer, and mild and rainy in autumn and spring. Occupied 8,000 years, the Mediterranean Basin has experienced dramatic changes to its forest and woodland areas, but nevertheless, they are still among the most diverse on the planet. From marshlands to high mountain ranges, from forests of holm and cork oaks to oak and pine forests high up in the mountains. All of them are home to thousands of animal and plant species whose paths cross on their adventures through life. And each one of them has a story to tell. Stories of the Mediterranean forest. Wintertime. The climate has a far-reaching impact on the existences of all living beings. From the hot summer to the cold winter, from the cool autumn to the warm spring. The four seasons that follow one another in the planet's temperate zones profoundly condition the lives and behavior of their inhabitants. Having survived the hot summer, when temperatures can reach more than 40 degrees Celsius, the inhabitants of the Mediterranean forest have to pass an even tougher test, if that's possible. The winter cold. Temperatures that can drop below minus 20 degrees Celsius in the interior of the Iberian Peninsula, and in an environment where food is scarce, surviving the winter becomes a daily challenge. Many birds prefer to migrate to warmer places, even though that may mean having to travel thousands of kilometers. And the ones that have decided to stay have to put into practice their adaptive skills in the changing environs that surround them. In September, the intensity of the sun's rays gradually diminishes. The days are shorter and shorter, the nights longer, and the temperatures start to drop. As less of the sun's energy reaches the planet, the plant's production of chlorophyll declines. Little by little, the green pigments in the leaves break down, revealing the yellow, ochre, and red pigments that were hidden before. Autumn unfolds in all its splendor. During the warm autumn, the trees and bushes offer up the best of themselves, their fruits. With high percentages of fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, these fruits are the chance the inhabitants of the Mediterranean forest were waiting for to get the energy reserves they need to make it through the harsh winter that's approaching. It's essential to eat everything they can. In the Northern Hemisphere, the astronomical winter begins with the winter solstice on the 21st of December and ends on the 21st of March with the spring equinox. Nevertheless, the meteorological winter starts in early December and finishes in late February. And it's during the winter when we can observe the amazing ability of the inhabitants of the Mediterranean forest to survive such harsh weather conditions. The little denizens of this complex ecosystem have also had to adapt in order to make it through the winter. Although some species of insects may migrate in order to survive the winter cold, the most common strategy in the Mediterranean forest is hibernation. The decreasing hours of sunlight set off the alarm in the biological clocks of insects. For many of them, it's a signal to go into diapause, a state in which their metabolism slows down, suspending their development and mobilizing their fat reserves in order to keep them alive under the leaves, buried in the soil, or in holes in the trees. In winter, some species lose some of the water with glycerol, a natural antifreeze that prevents the formation of destructive ice crystals at sub-zero temperatures. But the truth is that a common solution for many adult insects is simply to die, but not before having passed their genes down to the next generation, which is the eggs or larvae responsible for making it through the winter. Many of these larvae hide under the tree bark, boring tunnels and feeding on the wood. Even adult insects find the ideal place here to spend the winter. Nonetheless, no refuge is perfect. Several bird species have specialized in drilling through the wood in search of these small and succulent mouthfuls of protein, the woodpeckers. Woodpeckers are found throughout the Mediterranean basin. These birds prefer mature forests with a variety of tree species. With their sturdy beaks and powerful muscles, they're able to pierce through and remove the tree bark and dry tree trunks in search of the larvae and insects that they feed on throughout the year. Many of the small birds that live in the Mediterranean forest have adapted to the cold. To withstand the winter, they have eaten enough to build up a good fat reserve. But that doesn't mean that that stored energy ensures their survival. Those fats are only used to provide extra energy in moments of thermal stress or during the night. With their short, stout beaks designed to break open seeds, granivorous birds find food with a certain degree of ease, as long as the soil isn't frozen. Nevertheless, those insectivorous bird species that don't migrate to warmer climes have adapted, changing their diet during the winter. Great tits, blue tits, Eurasian blackbirds, and missel thrushes have slender beaks designed to catch insects in spring and summer. But when autumn arrives and during the winter, they have to eat fruits and seeds for the most part, although they never pass up the opportunity to dine on any sort of protein that crosses their path. They know that just a few centimeters under the surface there is a multitude of larvae and insects, and yet they aren't within their reach, as only heavy machinery can get them out of there. The wild boar is the tractor of the Mediterranean forest. With its tough mug, it's able to dig up the soil in search of roots, insects, and anything else that's edible and can quiet its grumbling stomach. Worms, larvae, and many other invertebrates are swarming underground, developing at the same time as protecting themselves from the cold temperatures outside. The subsoil is the pantry that supplies a large part of the proteins that wild boars consume during the winter. In a tree, a visitor watches earnestly as this efficient and skilled tractor turns over the forest floor with very little effort. The missel thrush knows that there is always some hidden treasure in the soil the boar churns up. When the boar leaves the place is the moment that many were waiting for. The small forest birds hunt in the disturbed earth for larvae and worms that have been exposed. They can't let a chance like this get away. In the Mediterranean forest, many eyes are watching and nothing goes unnoticed. This Eurasian sparrow The trees and bushes also use a variety of adaptation strategies to survive the cold winter months. When maintaining their foliage takes more energy than it produces, the most beneficial strategy for the oak trees and spend the unfavorable season in a state of low activity or repose. When they cut off the supply of sap to the leaves dry out and the wind and rain make them fall, leaving the branches bare and the ground covered with millions of leaves that begin to decompose. Nonetheless, the holm oak strategy is different. Although holm oaks also enter a period of inactivity in winter, their branches are full of a profusion of small, thick leaves that are covered with a waxy material on the outside, while at the same time containing on the inside an antifreeze substance that protects the leaves from the low temperatures. The adaptive difference between the Pyrenean oak is due to the species has adapted to survive. Unlike Pyrenean oaks, which live in areas with greater humidity and more fertile soils, where it is easier to get the necessary nutrients to produce all the new leaves each spring, holm oaks live in drier and hotter terrain with few nutrients, and so it is much more expensive to produce their thick leaves in terms of energy. Holm oaks can't afford the luxury of losing all their leaves each year. Nevertheless, every year, with the aim of perpetuating the species, holm oaks produce large quantities of acorns. During the winter, the holm oak forests in the interior of the Iberian Peninsula are the perfect haven for a visitor from Northern Europe, the common crane. Squadrons of cranes ply the skies in vigorous and sustained flight, constantly trumpeting. This is one of the most common and emblematic images of winter in the Mediterranean. The cranes find abundant food here, and compared to their breeding grounds, there's a lot more light and a lot less cold. These huge and unmistakable birds arrive on the peninsula around the month of October and stay until February. During the first few months of winter, they eat almost nothing but acorns. And once that resource has been used up, they feed on the grains of cereals left lying around on the ground and the tender shoots of recently planted crops, in addition to plant bulbs, legumes, worms, snails, and occasionally small vertebrates. At nightfall, they fly in noisy, symmetrical formations to their habitual roosts, which are usually ponds, reservoirs, irrigated fields, or wetlands located in quiet places that generally are not very far from where they feed. The cold nighttime temperatures cause the water vapor to condense. Fog is a low cloud that is often at ground level. These drops of water aren't big enough for the force of Earth's gravity to make them fall to the ground, as is the case of rain. With the first light of dawn, the inhabitants of the Mediterranean forests start their daily quest for food. These Iberian magpies are eating peacefully, whilst the lookouts have to be very alert for the dangers that threaten the group. With the fog, it's harder to see the stealthy predators prowling through the area. Fortunately, they spotted the red fox, and the magpies escaped to safety. Although the fox wasn't so much interested in the small members of the crow family as it was in looking for the remains of a rabbit that it has hidden among the rocks. The big racket caused by the shrill magpies has put this roe deer and her fawn on the alert. Everybody in the forest now knows that a predator is nearby and that they have to be even more careful than usual. The crane's trumpeting also announces their departure. It's time to leave the roost and go in search of their daily sustenance. The sun is gradually warming the Earth, and this increase in temperature slowly evaporates the fog, little by little. Fog occurs mainly in the coldest months. But the most characteristic weather phenomenon in winter is snow. Snow also makes its presence known in the Mediterranean basin, although there is less and less of it because of the higher temperatures caused by global warming. The white blanket covering the ground doesn't deter its little inhabitants from determinedly looking for food. They can't afford to stand idle, and any bite to eat is welcome. Although snowfalls that cover the ground for several days are rarer and rarer, small snowfalls are more common in the areas with a continental Mediterranean climate than in areas closer to the sea with milder temperatures where they're more unusual. The sunrise is welcomed by almost all the inhabitants of the Mediterranean forest, which take advantage of the slightest chance to warm themselves with the sun's rays. Spreading their wings, the vultures warm their bodies and so alleviate the cold from the low temperatures. As the sun rises, much of the snow and ice gradually melts. The rivulets and brooks flow freely, allowing the small birds of the Mediterranean forest to drink. And even if it's winter, a good dip is welcome. The birds need to have clean feathers free of the dust and mud that is gradually built up over many days. Keeping their plumage in good condition can mean the difference between life and death. Fortunately, sunny days are more plentiful in the Mediterranean basin than cloudy days. The sun has a beneficial effect on all living beings. Besides giving them more vitality and activating their immune system, sunlight plays a very important role in the synthesis of vitamin C, which is responsible for metabolizing calcium. European goldfinches eat grain, and they specialize in getting seeds from thistles. In wintertime, they wander the countryside, places where herbaceous plants loaded with seeds abound. Dry herbaceous plants are a great source of fiber for many other animals. The big herbivores also eat dry grass, even though it's less nutritious. They have to make the most of every source of food they come across. Their lives may depend on it. The Iberian ibex feeds on both herbaceous plants and woody ones. The males and females choose their diet according to the available resources and to the quality of their fiber. In mountain ecosystems, meadows are scarcer but very high quality, staying green almost all year thanks to their rich, moist soil. That's why the herds of goats don't have to move around much to find something to eat. But in the open oak forests called dehesas, where the soil is poorer and the vegetation undergoes seasonal variations, deer need a larger territory to find enough food to survive. Red deer like to combine wooded areas where they can eat the tips of the branches of woody plants with forest clearing. Well into the winter season, when the does are already pregnant, the stags lose interest in them. At that point, the stag's harem breaks away, forming other small groups of does. The basic social unit of red deer is the family group, formed by one adult female and her offspring from the last 2 or 3 years. And practically until they die, the does can produce 1 fawn a year, although not all of them survive their first winter. The day is coming to a close, and all the inhabitants of the Mediterranean forest are taking advantage of the last remaining hours of sunlight. Nightfall doesn't mean that peace will reign in the forest. For 24 hours, the inhabitants of the Mediterranean forest have to stay on the alert because any misstep could mean death. And death is practically assured if you cross paths with the deadliest feline in the southern part of the Iberian Peninsula. The Iberian lynx is a generally solitary animal linked to the Mediterranean hillside that is mainly active at twilight and during the night. Lynxes establish their territories in areas with a lot of scrubland and meadows where its favorite prey lives, the European rabbit. Although it is also able to catch partridges and many other bird species. In the winter months, when the rabbit populations are low, they can also hunt young deer and even juvenile mouflon. This hungry young female, which still hasn't found some free territory with enough resources for her to be able to settle there, is prowling this little corner of the Mediterranean forest. She's seen something that caught her attention. A fawn that hasn't managed to survive the hardships of winter might be the one to satisfy her hunger. But she's not at ease. She looks around nervously. She's entered a territory that's not her own. But hunger overcomes her fear. She still looks anxious and senses that someone is coming. The shrieking jays confirm her worst fears. The female that laid claim to this territory is approaching, and the intruder decides to leave as quickly as she can. She doesn't want to risk being badly hurt if there's a fight. The territory's owner sprays the tree trunk with urine. It's the sign that warns all others that this land belongs to her. Adult lynxes fiercely defend their territory against other lynxes, especially those of the same sex. Her attention is also drawn to the lifeless body of the young fawn. This well-fed female doesn't want to have anything to do with carrion. She prefers the fresh meat of some tender young rabbit. The steepest areas in the Sierra Morena, where the rocky cliffs rise like tall castles, is the territory of the Bonelli's eagle. The Bonelli's eagle is a large, strong bird of prey whose 2 kilos in weight and wingspan of 1.5 meters make it the most active. Its diet is quite varied. The Bonelli's eagle isn't infallible, however. Not every move it makes ends up with its prey being caught. One of the onlookers that saw the eagle's attack fail is a blue rock thrush. Adult male blue rock thrushes boast very characteristic blue plumage that makes them unmistakable. Something frightens this male, which quickly flits off to hide. This time, the Bonelli's eagle has been lucky, and his hunting has yielded a pigeon, from which he plucks the feathers little by little. These lovely birds of prey breed during the winter, and usually build their nests on rocky cliffs and canyon walls, where they typically raise 2 chicks. This male blue rock thrush likes to hover around the Bonelli's eagle's plucking spot. You never know where you'll find a bite to eat that will ease your hunger. Once he has plucked the pigeon, the male Bonelli's eagle offers it as a present to the female that he's courting. Look at that delicious gift. The male begins to clean his beak very thoroughly. One must not neglect one's personal hygiene for a single moment. Like Bonelli's eagles, blue rock thrushes have a marked preference for gorges, cliffs, and mountains in the Mediterranean area. Throughout the year, they eat all kinds of invertebrates. During the summer, they add small reptiles to their diet, while in autumn and winter, they round out their meals with fleshy fruits. For this blue rock thrush, the spot where the Bonelli's eagle plucks its prey is a great place to find larvae and now and again an adult insect that have been drawn to the remains left by the eagle. The red fox is also looking for something to fill its belly, but it's not going to get the drop on the blue rock thrush that easily. The fox continues on its way without realizing that it's being watched. A female roe deer observes the fox without alerting it to her presence. The doe is downwind and the fox can't smell a scent. Normally the roe deer would run away, but she can't. She broke a leg while running over rocky ground. In this state, she's easy prey. Unfortunately, her broken bone can't be cured and her fate is sealed. Not far from here, a lone wild boar carries on with its daily task of digging up some grub. The boar's opportunistic nature is on full display when it's looking for food. No kind of food that this species, and what's more, it finds the right balance of animal and plant proteins in every one of the ecosystem that it lives in. Its diet is typically made up of bits of plants, roots, bulbs, and seeds that it finds buried underground. It eats branches, stems, and tender shoots directly from the parts of plants that are above ground. Although another important element of its diet is animal proteins, invertebrates for the most part, which helps the boar to maintain a balanced and complete diet. January is usually the month with the lowest temperatures. The inhabitants of the Mediterranean forest have reached the midpoint of winter, and they can't waste any chance to eat that luck may provide them. The lone boar has got lucky. It's found the carcass of the female roe deer with the broken leg. The seriousness of her injuries and her inability to move in search of food have cost her her life. And wild boars are also scavengers. A red kite watches the scene intently. Belly, it too, but it's not in a rush to eat. The red kite wants to make sure that the boar isn't coming back. It needs to be very certain that no danger is hovering around when it decides to fly down. This mid-sized bird of prey is a poor hunter. Its prey tend to be small or easy to catch, like weak or sick animals, so it often eats carrion too. The chance to wolf down several nice slices of deer is a great opportunity. Today has been a good day for some of the inhabitants of the Mediterranean forest that will have food for several days thanks to the roe deer's carcass. Thus death transforms into life. Creatures that live in the Mediterranean forest begin to sense that winter is leaving them little by little. There are still days of cold and snow ahead, but the fellow who brings news that the change of seasons is near won't be long in arriving from Africa. In early February, the storks return to their breeding grounds, where it's already much easier to find food. The days are growing longer and the temperatures are gradually rising. Meeting up again after months of being apart in warmer lands. They only come together to bring forth a new generation. The stork's arrival doesn't mean that the bad weather has disappeared. During the month of February, there can still be frequent snowfalls and the temperatures remain low. But despite that, the storks have a lot of preparations to make before they can bring their little... The winter cold is without a doubt the toughest test that all the inhabitants of the Mediterranean forest face. The low temperatures, the lack of food, and the scant hours of sunlight mean that only the strongest and best adapted survive. Nevertheless, survival is also often a question of luck, what you're going to run into. And a stroke of luck may mean the difference between living and dying. Fortunately, the climate is changing. The global rise in temperatures is causing a drop in precipitation, especially in the form of snow. And the behavior of many species change in an attempt to adapt to these new environmental conditions. It's at this moment life opens a path even in the worst circumstances, and that we living beings are ready to fight to survive in any situation, even in wintertime.